In the history of the Russian Cossacks, there is no more striking example of loyalty to duty than the fate of Timofei Yashik, the personal bodyguard of Tsar Nicholas II and his mother, Empress Maria. This man lived through revolution, civil war, and exile, but never broke his oath. Since 1832, the protection of Romanov dynasty was entrusted to the Cossacks, the most reliable and loyal warriors of the empire. The selection was strict. They chose not only the most worthy, but also the most prominent, tall, stately, with thick beards. Their scarlet ceremonial uniform and bright blue everyday uniform distinguished them even among the guards. Timofei Yashchik was born on April 20, 1878, in the village of Novominskaya in the Yashik department in a large family. His memoirs contain the following lines.
I was born in Russia, my beloved Russia, more precisely in the Caucasus in the Kuban region.
As a hereditary Zaporozhian Cossack, whose ancestors moved to Kuban from the Chernihiv province, Timofei wore Cossack attire from the age of 4. And even earlier, he learned from his father the immutable truth.
My horse under me is my God above me.
From early childhood, the horse he rode to school was an example of loyalty. The Cossacks never used horses for ploughing, only oxen were harnessed to the plough and harrow. Timofei's parents served as an example of loyalty and obedience to the Lord, about which he spoke as follows.
The basis of the joy of life was a true faith in God. My family was very religious. I learned early to love and obey God. As soon as I began to speak more or less correctly, my father taught me the words of prayer and taught me to cross myself, bow and kneel.
Driven by a conscious sense of duty and firm devotion to the Tsar, Timofei joined the 1st Yashik Regiment, stationed in Tiflis in 1900. As an excellent marksman, he was immediately assigned as an orderly to the convoy of the commander of the troops of the Caucasian Military District, Governor-General Prince Grigory Sergeyevich Golitsyn. Together with Golitsyn, he attended a large military parade on the occasion of the christening of the heir to the throne, Tsarevich Alexei, which he mentioned in his memoirs.
It was an unforgettable celebration. The German Kaiser, William II, was the godfather, and the Dowager Empress, Dagmar, was the godmother. In those days I had no idea that later I would be allowed to carry the young Tsarevich in my arms. And not just once, but countless times. If someone had predicted this happy prospect for me, I would not have believed it. I was absorbed only in seeing the Tsar with my own eyes, and I was glad that upon returning home, I would be able to tell the entire village about this exceptional event.
From May 20, 1905 to June 6, 1907, Timofei successfully served as a guard in the imperial convoy and then returned to his native Kuban village, where he and his wife Marfa ran the household and raised their children for 5 years. Returning to the army in 1912, he rose to the rank of platoon sergeant in the Lifeguards 1-stone Kuban Cossack 100 until he became an orderly to Tsar Nicholas II. In the spring of 1914, on the eve of the First World War, the Tsar was choosing his personal guard from among the best Cossacks of the Imperial Life Guard. Walking along the line of prepared candidates, the Tsar stopped near a tall, stately young man with black eyebrows and blue eyes. Timofei recalls the feelings he felt when the Tsar chose him.
I didn't even show that I couldn't stand on my feet from happiness. I was 36 years old. As they say, I was at my best age, but it seemed that my life was just beginning. I tried to learn the art that was most important for a lifeguard Cossack, to completely disappear into the shadows so that no one would notice your presence, and yet be close enough to reappear at any necessary moment.
The Life Cossack served at the Tsar's side for less than a year, but the figure of the sovereign occupies a special place in his memoirs. The orderly often mentions the name of the monarch, and tells of curious incidents connected with him, which he happened to witness. At the same time, every word spoken to the Tsar is imbued with genuine love and respect. He testifies to the human qualities of the sovereign.
The Tsar's ability to share the pain and misfortunes of his people was amazing. The Tsar was too humane and compassionate to be a great, arrogant ruler. The fates of individual little people touched him deeply. He was too kind to be the Tsar of Russia. Many modern historians call Tsar Nicholas II a weak and indecisive man. We, who lived next to him during several of the most difficult years, know that in all cases he was a man who strove for the best. He repeatedly visited the front lines during the First World War to talk with officers and privates, and I never saw the slightest sign of fear in him. We loved and protected the sovereign not out of self-interest. For us, it was an honor.
Timofei's memoirs contain vivid evidence of the people's love and respect for the Tsar.
I saw many examples of how the common people, the broad masses of the people, loved the Tsar. They trusted him and his desire to help them. Wherever we went, people crowded around him. The population in this area treated their Tsar with love, and when people saw him walking in the forest surrounding the palace, they shouted, "Long live the Tsar!" and waved to him and his family. This was the case until the last day.
In December 1915, Timofei, on the recommendation of Tsar Nicholas II, entered the service of his mother, the Dowager Empress Maria, as a lifeguard Cossack. This was a special milestone in his life. Having found himself at the side of the Dowager Empress during the war, Timofei witnessed her active work as the chairperson of the Russian Red Cross. The Life Cossack recalled that Maria devoted herself to this work body and soul.
She often visited many hospitals and infirmaries and always found a friendly word for wounded soldiers. She paid special attention to helping the disabled with prosthetic limbs. Schools were organized for them, including the blind, where they could learn some kind of craft.
Soon, Timofei had to accompany her to Kiev, where in March 1917, the 70-year-old empress learned the tragic news of Tsar Nicholas II's abdication. The very next day, she went to his Mogilev headquarters, where she saw her beloved son for the last time. The Life Cossack witnessed how 3 authorized representatives of the new government with red armbands arrived for the sovereign to accompany him to St. Petersburg. Timofei recalled this event.
The empress embraced him, kissed him tenderly, and blessed him. She cried a lot more than I have ever seen a strong Danish princess cry before or after. The Tsar burst into tears, took his greatcoat and fur hat, and said that he was ready to follow them. The former empress saw her eldest son for the last time, but all her life she constantly and firmly believed that she would see him again.
Following this, the new authorities politely but firmly ordered Empress Maria to leave for the Crimea, where she lived for 2 years under virtual house arrest, occasionally subjected to unceremonious searches. It was obvious that dark clouds were gathering over Russia. And early in 1919, Admiral Colthorpe, commander of the British naval forces in Sevastopol, conveyed to the Dowager Empress a personal invitation to Great Britain from the English King George V. He provided the dreadnought Marlborough for the evacuation. By that time, neither Tsar Nicholas II nor his family was alive, but Empress Maria considered this to be a rumor and fervently believed that they had managed to escape. It was for this reason that she stubbornly refused to leave Russia, despite the Bolshevik advance, and remained there for a long time. After much persuasion, only her daughter Xenia managed to convince her of the need to evacuate. In the spring of 1919, Empress Maria, sailing away on a military vessel from the Yalta pier, cast her last glance at the shores of the great country where she had spent her best years. After a short stay in London, the Empress arrived in Copenhagen in August of the same year. All this time, she was accompanied by her faithful Cossack, Timofei, even though he had a family in his native Kuban, his wife, Marfa, and 9 children. Timothy recalls the news of the death of the Tsar and his family as follows.
One day in early autumn, 3 German officers came to the palace and had a long conversation with the court-martial. As soon as they left, Dolgoruki went up to the Empress and reported on the conversation. The Germans reported that the next day the Russian newspapers would report that the Tsar, his wife, and their 5 children had been killed in Yekaterinburg. But we were not to believe this, since the German officers assured us that the entire imperial family had escaped. Soon everyone in the house knew about the visit and the conversation that had taken place. When I was summoned to the Empress shortly after, I noticed that she was in high spirits and looked happier than usual. The next day they brought us a newspaper describing the murder. We read the article with smiles since we knew that it was all untrue.
During the first years of their life in Europe, neither he nor Empress Maria doubted that the Bolsheviks would not last long in power, and that the wanderers would soon return safely to Russia. But time passed, and in 1922, Timofei learned that the Bolsheviks had shot his wife. At that time he was already persistently, but in vain, looking for an opportunity to take his family to Denmark. He only managed to get an exit permit for his youngest son, who was sick with tuberculosis, but he did not live to see the departure. 3 years after his wife's death, Empress Maria blessed him for a second marriage to a Danish woman, Agnes Abrink, who was baptized into orthodoxy with the name Nina. She wrote down his memoirs from dictation, which formed the basis of the book next to the Empress, Memories of a Life Cossack. He described his life in exile with the following words:
"Nothing makes me happy when we don't have Russia, and other people's joy doesn't console me."
After the Empress died in 1928, her loyal assistant and bodyguard stood guard at her deathbed for 3 days. He later recalled,
"When I laid Empress Maria in the coffin, she was so dry that she seemed almost weightless. I really hoped that the Empress knew how grateful I was to her for her kindness."
Empress Maria blessed Timofei with a small inheritance, which was enough to open a grocery store in the town of Valby. Simple trade fed Timofei and his wife until the end of their days, and he lived 68 years. In 1946, he was buried next to his wife in the Russian cemetery in Copenhagen. Until his last breath, the Imperial Life Guard's Cossack Timofey Yashchik, who faithfully served the Tsar and the fatherland, did not lose hope of returning to his native Kuban. For this reason, he never accepted Danish citizenship and did not fully learn the Danish language. Years later, Yashik's relatives and many people became interested in his fate. The result was the publication of the book next to the Empress. It includes the memoirs of Yashik, his short autobiography and London diary, a large number of appendices, and a detailed scientific commentary, as well as many rare photographs. In Tallinn, in the Church of St. Nicholas the Wonderworker, a memorial sign to the Cossack Yashik was erected by the Cossacks of the separate northwestern Cossack district of Estonia. This is the first memorial sign to date installed in the Baltics.